19th century photography reveals a snapshot of life on the frontiers of the United States. Women who worked in brothels, portrayed in their rooms, facing the lens. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you. In Death Valley in the 1870s, the transport of borax gained new momentum. To overcome the dryness of the Great Basin, 20 mule wagons appeared, long lines moving at a steady pace, carrying the mineral from the mines to the depots. The harshness of the road shaped an efficient system that combined animal power, simple engineering, and precise coordination to cross the desert. At left in the photo, Black Elk appears as both witness and protagonist of two striking episodes. In 1876, he took part in the Battle of Little Bighorn, a clash that set United States forces against several tribes of the Great Plains, among them the Lakota Sioux, a key moment of indigenous resistance. His trajectory stitches the image to the broader course of American history. Son of Cynthia Ann Parker, captured as a girl and taken in by the Comanches, Quanah Parker grew up between worlds and chose to lead his own. When buffalo hunters began to invade the plains, he rose as a voice of resistance, forging alliances and strategies to protect his people's territory and culture, on a passage that marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. In an old portrait, two sex workers pose in an ornate room of a brothel in Miles, Montana. At the time, a district judge described the town as having around 1,000 inhabitants, yet gripped by disorder and loose moral codes. The image records the contrast, the shine of the setting before a community with a wavering rule of law. The scene suggests luxury and precariousness coexisting. In the image, a cowboy from Caldwell, Kansas, shows how clothing is born of work. Hat, boots, and belt serve before they adorn. They face sun, dust, and saddle. Depending on the weather and terrain, he chooses chaps that go over his pants, shielding his legs from branches, stones, and rain. Thus, each piece of clothing fulfills a function and tells the routine of this trade in the open range. This image is pointed to as the last photograph of George Armstrong Custer. Between poses and campaigns, Custer made the camera an ally. Restless about his own image, he allowed himself to be recorded more than 150 times. This portrait, made 2 months before a decisive episode in American history, precedes the Battle of Little Bighorn, fought in 1876. When the daguerreotype lost ground, the ambrotype gained it, an image fixed on a glass plate and more accessible, popular in the 1850s. The portrait here shows a man with no known name. Even so, his gaze and restrained posture turn the scene into a unique record of the American West, a vestige of the frontier amid the changes of a formative era. In Greenwood, Kansas, the journey pauses at noon. Emigrants gather beside the wagon and share the meal that sustains the next step. Between simple utensils and brief conversation, the road breathes. The vehicle, partner to so many departures, moves on when hunger subsides, carrying those who seek new opportunities and land to write their own tomorrow. Joella Irwin paved the way for cowgirls at the start of the 20th century. In a rodeo universe dominated by men, she turned the female presence into an attraction and a reference. She passed through various arenas, competed in different events, and showed technique, courage, and rhythm. Her trajectory connected tradition and change, drawing the public and inspiring new competitors to occupy the center of the arena. Dated 1884, this cabinet card, a photographic format in vogue at the time, presents a scene recorded at the San Carlos Reservation in Arizona. The portrait is considered the first known image of Geronimo. A leading figure among the Apache, he spanned time and beyond the historical role, became a widely recognized cultural reference. Jesse James became known as the most recognizable face of the James Younger gang. Leading robberies, he crossed the Old West and became a symbol of banditry. His fame grew with each strike, fed by accounts that cast him as rebel or villain in the newspapers and in conversation. The route ended abruptly. Betrayed at home, he died in 1882, and the legend took the man's place. A symbol of the expansion of the American frontier, Kit Carson lived among trails and decisions that shaped the West. He began as a fur trader, became an explorer, and in the mountains forged a reputation for endurance. Later, he guided John Pathfinder Fremont on decisive expeditions, establishing himself as a key figure of an era when maps were still being born step by step. In the photograph, dated around 1880, the subjects remain without certain identification. Even so, historians point out that the standing man may be John Kinney. Once an obscure name, he came to prominence in 1875 when he assumed leadership of a gang of thieves operating in southern New Mexico, a step that projected him onto the region's criminal scene. The image, therefore, still intrigues today. In 1899, Pearl Hart entered the history of the Old West by carrying out one of the last stagecoach robberies. The strike echoed beyond local borders. Her name circulated across the country, and shortly afterward, her story found space in the pages of Cosmopolitan magazine, consolidating her fame and sealing her place in the memory of that period, an episode that symbolizes the dusk of that world. At 15, Rose Dunn, known as the Rose of Cimarron, entered history. In 1895, in the town of Ingalls in Oklahoma Territory, she is said to have helped her fugitive boyfriend during a shootout between lawmen and criminals. The gesture, surrounded by conflicting versions, took her from anonymity to a legend that still provokes debate in the imagination of the Old West. From the battlefield to the pastures, Texas John Slaughter followed a path that helps tell the West. In the Civil War, he served as a Texas Ranger. Once the conflict ended, he turned to cattle and built his last ranch on the outskirts of Douglas, Arizona. A photograph dated around 1885 records this turning point and keeps his story alive for new generations. Olive Oatman's trajectory was marked by survival and the ability to adapt. Captured by members of the Mojave tribe, she lived among them and in that period received on her chin a tattoo made with blue cactus dye. The design, part of a local custom, carried spiritual meaning. For the Mojave, it would help ensure a peaceful passage after death. The Texas Rangers were born at the beginning of the 19th century. They emerged informally in 1823, when Stephen Austin gathered men to protect the settlers. Only in 1835 did they gain official organization. Throughout the history of Texas, they became a reference point. They patrolled borders, pursued fugitives, and undertook missions that maintained order in a territory in expansion. An until then unknown photograph came to light. In it, a woman, possibly the head of a ranch, drives cattle through an as-yet unidentified landscape of the American West. The image surfaced by chance when writer Mark Lee Gardner found it in an antique shop in Missouri, revealing an unexpected fragment of rural life. Who was she, and what story lies behind the scene? On the frontier of the Old West, the name Tibuchio Vasquez echoed for years. The photograph, dated around 1865, fixes the face of someone who became synonymous with transgression. For about 2 decades, he traveled roads and towns, involved in crimes. His trajectory helped shape the imagery surrounding Hispanic outlaws and keeps alive the debate over his fame. In the Old West, the daily life of cowboys did not stay only on the cattle trails. Between one drive and another, many entered studios to fix their own image in portraits. They chose to pose as they were seen on the open range, marked hat, worn boots, gun belt at hand. The photo became a keepsake, proof of trade and identity, carrying to paper the life they rode. Bill Doolin, an outlaw in Oklahoma Territory, became a target when the reward for his capture grew. The fame of his robberies mobilized posses and trackers. In August 1896, the hunt ended. He fell in a shootout, hit by about 20 bullets. Leading the charge was Heck Thomas, a U.S. deputy marshal, who closed in and ended Doolin's trajectory. During the funeral procession of Tom McClory, Frank McClory, and Billy Clanton, a sign rises, "Murdered on the streets of Tombstone." It was not mere protest, it was living memory of the clash that marked the town. In 1881, behind the OK Corral, a brief gunfight ended 3 lives and lit the flame of a story that crossed generations, turning that instant into a myth of the Old West. Kate Rockwell, a stage performer, left her mark on the lives of Alaska's prospectors at the end of the 19th and start of the 20th century. In crowded saloons, she alternated popular songs and steps, leading the audience from laughter to silent attention. Her most anticipated number came when she entered in red chiffon, an image that became her signature. Thus, she turned rough nights into spectacle and left a lasting memory. In the 1865 photo, Wild Bill Hickok appears without sets or costumes. Instead of the theatrical outfits he adopted in other poses, he wears what he used day to day. The detail draws attention. It reveals how he really preferred to present himself in the Old West. Looking at this image, we get a truer portrait of his style and clothing choices of that time. No studio tricks. In 1876, at the height of the cattle drives across the plains, Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp posed together in Dodge City, Kansas. The photo goes beyond the record. It seals the partnership of 2 lawmen who sought to impose order in a frontier town. By freezing this meeting, the portrait links the rhythm of the cattle trails to the emergence of an authority that would mark American history,